you go, Metallica. If someone knows what that means, tell me.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted! Rod Moore! And Michigan will win the game! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous!
Hail, hail, Michigan, the champions of college football.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
Welcome back to The Rivalry podcast. Jace, JP, Michigan, Ohio State, garbage-free college football podcast focused on the rivalry. It's sports talk without all the tangents from River Radio Ministries and presented by our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction. We have got a ton to get to from this college football weekend. First, we're going to break the ice with a little bit of wheel route. By the way, if you're not following on social media, had the chance to be down in Ann Arbor, or I guess up in Ann Arbor this past weekend for Michigan-USC. My boy JP here with a phenomenal job on the field as the photographer. Instagram, Twitter, rivalpod.com, and at rivalpod. And while you're at rivalpod.com, don't forget to get yourself a shirt. Michigan, Ohio State, support the rivalry however you so choose.
Yeah, just got some shirts actually ordered. They're on their way now, so we're about to be restocked a little bit. Perfect time to grab them.
All right, team to keep an eye on. So this would be, interpret that how you will, but a surprising team this year that you feel like this team might be sneaky good. And also, if you're not watching and subscribing on YouTube right now, you can. It's the same handle as social at Rival Pod. This is an easy one for me.
I'm curious if we've got the same answer here.
Illinois.
Okay, we don't. For sure don't have. We're not even close.
So Illinois goes into Lincoln in I don't know when the last top 25 undefeated Nebraska-Illinois matchup was, but
this past Friday, some of the greatest football games happened this past Friday.
Nebraska started off 3-0, I believe, for the first time since 2016, and Illinois, I want to say since 2011. It's been a bit, but they meet, and Illinois comes off with a really impressive overtime win.
Road win.
On the road against Nebraska. And so for me, it's Illinois. They're ranked, I believe, and I'm blanking, of course, as soon as I say that. I believe Illinois is ranked inside the top 20 now.
They should.
They were, I believe, 22, 24, somewhere in there.
They were 24. Nebraska was 22.
So they are at least somewhere in the realm of a top 20 football team, undefeated right now. I'm really interested in what this weekend looks like for them because they play Penn State. They've got Penn State at night in Happy Valley.
Man.
If Illinois... I'll put it this way, because again,
I will be nervous for you.
Well, I'm looking at this as a Michigan man. All right. So Michigan goes to Champaign in late October. I believe it's October 19th. So right off the bye week. Illinois, if they manage to beat Penn State in Happy Valley, not only will Illinois go into that Michigan game, very likely a 6-0 football team by the time they get there. Not only will they be ranked well within the top 15, but that's going to be a dangerous, dangerous team. Now, that's a tall task on Saturday to beat Penn State on the road at night.
I'm not confident in that.
But I am surprised, and I am extremely interested. I know Georgia, Alabama is the big matchup this weekend. Obviously, this doesn't hold a candle to that. But I am also going to be very, very interested to just kind of split screen there. And, the question, like, what's in the quad box? Illinois, Penn State's going to be one of the first two in there.
Saturday night is going to just be, my whole entire house is going to be just illuminated with TV screens.
Well, because you guys play a night game on top of that.
7 o'clock at Michigan State. You've got the Illinois, Penn State game. You obviously have Georgia, Alabama, all around that 7 o'clock-ish range. So, I have plans Saturday night, if you didn't know. It is going to be sitting my butt on a couch.
What's your surprising team?
Miami. I know that's not... I don't think people expected the turnaround like they've kind of happened, but I was looking at their schedule. Obviously, Cam Ward has had just a phenomenal season so far. Got to be in the lead for one of the Heisman finalists at this point, but their schedule is super favorable. So I was checking this out. I mean, at the beginning of the season, you would have looked at that and said, well, they play Florida State, who is a top 10 team. We've seen who Florida State is.
They are who we thought they were.
Except they're not. Except they're not. The only team that they have left on their schedule that is currently ranked is Louisville, who I just don't believe is better than Miami. And so at this point, I look at that and I go, man, I don't know if they lose a game.
You could be looking at an undefeated Miami team.
Yeah.
Here's what will be interesting too is that, if trends continue, Miami will obviously have to play in an ACC championship game.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC feels wide open. I guess you'd look at a team like, I don't know, Duke. Would Duke be in that conversation? I don't know.
Yeah.
With Clemson, I guess
Clemson would be my guess.
Miami's, I guess what we're saying is Miami's real next test is going to be, Louisville, if things continue as the way that they are, but also, they've got a path to an ACC championship game.
That's the only ranked team as of now that they have on their schedule. So even if they were to drop that, that's still a 1-loss team. That's good enough to probably get you into the playoffs if you win the ACC championship.
The level to which they're good, not that they're good, but the level to which they're performing is impressive. All right, so let's talk. We mentioned being at Michigan for Michigan and USC again on social at Rival Pod. You got some phenomenal stuff. You got Donovan Edwards coming right into the living room. You just position yourself really, really well.
The entire time that he broke loose on that run, in my head, I'm going, okay, keep the camera steady. And also, Donovan, if you could turn a little bit to the right, that would be great. And he heard
just a hair.
And he heard me, and he did. He ran directly in front of me. My father-in-law was messaging me, asking me if he could, where I was at in the stadium, so he could kind of keep an eye. I knew where I was, so watching highlights again afterwards, I was able to point out where I was numerous times. You had texted me last night a picture where you see me with my phone out, just standing there as Don is running directly towards me. So I will say Michigan's stadium, going to the big house, just the accommodations they give for photographers and videographers. I've never been in the press box. I'm always on field when we go there. And the whole experience as just a football fan is just phenomenal. You get basically free range wherever you want to go to be able to grab some shots. People are super friendly. They all think that I'm a Michigan fan. So towards the end of the game, when everything's going on, people are trying to high five me. I'm like, sorry, bro, got to take some pictures.
Taking pictures
can't high five you right now.
My bad.
And all that.
I love that for you.
I hated it very much so, but it is very great. I love being able to go to the big house and shoot games because it's just, you're able to grab such cool stuff while you're there. So
I don't remember if it was after the Donovan touchdown or near the end of the game, but I just got a text that just said, I hate it here. And that just made me happy. It really did. Michigan-USC is a fascinating game to try to analyze because it is a tale of two halves.
Yeah.
There's 100 different angles you could take on this, but I want to
start a lot that you learned about both teams.
For sure. And so let's start with just a tale of two halves here because Michigan absolutely dominated USC for the first 2 quarters of that football game.
Yeah, it was
it wasn't close.
USC didn't even realize there was a football game. The offense looked non-existent. The defense was
the defense was fine, but here's what Michigan did really well, and this extended beyond. It was primarily the first half, yes, but then you saw this obviously on the very last drive. Is Michigan's philosophy is going to be that Sherrone Moore smash, smash, smash. That's the philosophy, and when you have a quarterback like Alex Orji, that's what it's going to be. This is going to be a run-heavy team. Michigan is a service academy now. This is
Navy
what they
was
do.
Just so pumped for you guys.
32 yards is the lowest passing total Michigan has had in nearly 40 years. And they won. But the reason I mentioned that is Michigan's offense just continued to pound and pound and pound. And then when you could look at it and say, well, you just had 3, you could take the Ohio State round and be like, well, it's just 3 or 4 plays that beat us. No, what beat you is that Michigan said, we are going to run the ball. And when you continue to do that again and again and again, that's where you have Kalel break one off, where Don breaks one off. That's where you have the massive run from Kalel at the end of the game. You create those explosive plays because you commit to the identity. That's been the big question for Michigan is, what is this team trying to be? We got an answer. And again, even if you're a fan, you don't have to even like the answer. This is what it's going to be. Will you throw for just 32 yards in the future? Probably not. You'll probably do a little bit more than that. But this is what you're going to expect. And I was really impressed, especially with the first half. The second half was just completely different story for Michigan. It's a combination of things. I think number one, Lincoln Riley's a really good football coach. I know that, he's kind of like Marcus Freeman in a lot of ways where I think he's a talented coach, but has he had the marquee win to hang his hat on?
It's not on the resume.
No, but he's still a really good football coach. Okay. And USC looked like a different football team in the second half. Miller Moss looked like a much better quarterback in the second half.
He had more time.
And we know he's a really strong quarterback. We said, okay, they're not to their offense coming into the game. They're not Texas level, but they remind you a lot of the way that offense operates. And you saw a lot of that, especially in the second half. Part of that is the adjustments from USC. Part of it is Michigan fans are understandably frustrated with Wink Martindale because I don't understand the schemes that he's throwing out there. And again, we've said on this podcast before, we've compared it to Andy Bernard in The Office when he was pretending to be a food critic. And he says, I think I could be a food critic. This muffin tastes bad. And there's more to it than that, but yes, technically that's kind of how I am with X's and O's. Okay. If there are other podcasts you can go to for the schemes and the breakdown, whatever, if I can look at your defensive scheme and go, this muffin tastes bad, something should probably change. The case in point, the easiest one is USC has a touchdown where they've got two guys wide out to the right. Michigan's got two guys over their covering. One of those guys at the snap of the ball blitzes off the corner. Well, that's going to be a problem because now you've got a guy who just runs straight ahead, turns at the goal line and catches a touchdown pass. Nobody run him for 15 yards. I don't know if that's a blown assignment. I don't know if that's Wink saying, screw it, we're going to continue to blitz at 48%, but something shifted from the philosophy in the first half to the second half. Because I don't believe that it's just, well, all of a sudden Michigan is just not getting home quite as much. I don't buy that.
Well, you saw that towards the end of the game. It was like the entire first half, Miller Moss had 0 seconds. I mean, being on the field, it was like if they went back for a pass, which they did a heck of a lot, that I don't totally understand.
Attempts.
I don't totally understand how, I guess, if your offensive line isn't holding up in the pass game, what makes you think any different in the run game? And the run game was but they go back 51 times. He completes 28 passes, throws 3 touchdowns and interception for 200 or 300. I don't remember the exact stat.
He got his yards.
But it was like almost every single time in that first half that he dropped back, a Michigan defender was there within a couple of seconds, and he was either forced to make a throw on the run, he was made to throw early. I mean, all over the place. Yeah. And then the second half they come out and they just move at ease. But then you get to the final couple of drives, which to Michigan's credit, they had to buckle down in. Yeah. And it was the same story as the first half. It was immediately the second Miller Moss dropped back. He was under pressure, having to make rapid decisions. And again, that was the strength of the entire first half.
That's where, again, I simply don't know if that is a schematic shift or what, but it was night and day different, which tells me something changed besides all of a sudden USC got a better offensive line. You know, they hydrated and had a banana at halftime. Like something else shifted there. I do believe that Josiah Stewart was off the field for the entirety of that opening second half drive, which makes no sense to me. And that comes back to the coaching thing.
Well, and Will Johnson was also not there for a good portion of it as well.
And shout out, by the way, because Kalel is going to get a ton of love, which he absolutely should. But Josiah Stewart living in Miller Moss's grill the entire game had everything that you just said had a massive impact on that game. That guy had himself a day, and it wasn't just him. Mason Graham was in there. Kenneth Grant was in
defense.
There. That is the Michigan defense. And you can look at it and you can go, well, you gave up X number of points or X number of yards. If you watched the game, that is the type of defense that Michigan expected to have. That's the type of defense that Michigan is going to have to continue to win games like this. The defense gave their offense enough opportunities, even when the offense was sputtering and squandered some opportunities. The defense gave the offense just enough opportunities to get the job done. That's how Michigan's going to have to succeed. So shout out to the Michigan defense. I know there was a lot of frustration with how some of that second half, particularly the third quarter, went. I think despite some of the adjustments and schemes they were being given, I think they played through some of those things, despite some of those things, had a really, really nice day.
Yeah, I think you learned a lot about both teams through this game. I think you learned this is the Michigan team that I think everybody kind of expected coming into this season, where you expected a dominating defense, big plays on offense, consistent running game. I actually looked and I calculated this. So it was like I took the touchdowns you guys had, and then obviously the massive gain at the end that put you guys in position to win. It was a 53-yarder, a 41-yard touchdown, and then a 63-yard run. You guys, if you just combine those 3 plays, it accounted for about half of your total yards.
Yeah.
And that's just what you're going to say. You've already talked about that part enough. This was what I think Michigan fans were. I think if I'm a Michigan guy, I'm excited about this performance, obviously because it was a huge win, but because now you finally look like the team I think you expected. You both running backs, even though I don't think Donovan should be the running back 1 still, he had a fine game. He averaged about 5 yards per carry. He had the massive touchdown run. He didn't do much after that. He did have a crucial fumble at the end, but I think it solidified Kalel Mullings can be the running back 1, which I think we all knew. It also proved what we said last week on the podcast, that Alex Orji should have been QB1 to start the year. The offense just looks differently. It flows better.
Yep.
Forget whatever his passing yards were. Nobody expected him to go out there and throw the ball. It was exactly what we said. It was going to be a lot of run plays. It was going to be a lot of who is Alex keeping the ball? Yep. Is he handing it off to Alex?
A lot of hesitation.
And that's what it was. And it was ground and pound until they broke. But then I also learned for USC that it was at that borderline where I go, okay, well, are they finally elite this year? And I learned they're not. They are the same USC that I always have thought they are. They are an above average team. They are not great yet. They haven't been great since the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush era. They have just been a very good team. That's not to take away from Michigan and say this isn't a crucial win. It was a must win for the Michigan team to keep their season alive. I don't think USC is there yet. And I think part of it is Big Ten football. I think they came in kind of expecting that, well, we're USC, we're favorites, we've seen what we've seen from Michigan this season. We're not intimidated. And
to
Michigan
be fair,
showed them
they played a good LSU team.
Yeah.
And I held them to 110, 120 on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan blew that out of the water. So I mean, they had a reason. Their
confidence was there for a reason.
Their defense is much improved, but the defense was not able to do enough when Michigan, as a pretty one-dimensional offense, at least in this game plan, is still able to run the ball like that and win when you know what's coming. You're right. It's a big win for Michigan, and it shows you a lot about what USC is going to be moving forward.
Yeah, and it was a nice welcome to the Big Ten. I think USC kind of expected they were going to come in, and I don't think they're used to playing the brand of football that Big Ten schools are used to playing, and that was a good wake-up call. I think it'll be a good wake-up call for them in the future of, okay, well, the team we're building isn't built for the new conference we're in. We've got to get bigger, we've got to get stronger, and still got to keep – they had plenty of speed. That wasn't the issue at all. But, man, that offensive line was just getting torched over. I mean, everybody in the stands knew it. If Miller Moss was dropping back to pass, somebody in a blue uniform was going to be there pretty darn quick, and he was going to have to get it out quick, which I think was a good second-half adjustment for them. I think in the first half, they tried a lot more deep passes, a lot more shots, not necessarily like Hail Mary level shots.
But he got the ball out quicker.
They were doing longer routes. In the second half, they didn't. They were doing a bunch of dinking around, and they found out.
Yeah. And the other thing with Michigan, too, because I don't want to put the entirety of, why did the second half struggle on a defense that I thought played very, very well, even despite, again, some of the things I suggested, is, the offense had a really rough go of it in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, I was looking at the stats recap before this episode. I want to say that they had 4 punts, the fumble from Don, and then the final drive. They had, I want to say it was mid fourth quarter. Don't quote me on that. They had like 12 yards of offense.
No, it was about 12.
And that's the piece where if you're Michigan, it's that beautiful thing where when you win a football game, it's a lot easier to look back and go, okay, what happened here? Mm-hmm. Can we adjust that? You would much rather see that on the other side of a big win than going, well, that's another loss. And, what does our season look like moving forward? Yeah. Okay. I wrote down 4 punts and a fumble before that second half drive. And the offense before that drive only had the ball for somewhere in the realm of 7.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So USC had the football a ton. And that's where the offense is going to have to, as much as the defense is giving them opportunities, you've got to be able to, one, generate some momentum. You've got to be able to flip the field, which shout out Tommy Doman, actually had a very nice game. He's been a little bit lackluster to start the year. Believe pinned USC inside the 15 3 times at least, if not 4. I mean, just that stuff
in the first
matters.
half, USC's starting position was like Miller Moss was in his own end zone more times than he wasn't.
And then the obvious, I mean, and we don't even, it's at the point where you don't even almost have to say it, but just Kalel Mullings was a phenomenal performance.
If he's not on that team, I am not confident in your guys' ability to drive, what was it, 80 or 90 yards or something that last drive? No chance.
One of the things that I think was helpful, and then I'll flip to Minnesota here, is after the game, Sherrone had said, quote, Kalel obviously showed that he should be the number one guy.
Good.
Now, he's
listening to the podcast finally.
Thank you, Sherrone. We appreciate that. You know, and he, in the context of the greater quote, you know, he's talking about how the importance of having Donovan on the team, the importance of both guys getting a ton of carries. So like, don't just take that as him going, hey, we're making a major change. But I think the fact that he is saying something like even approaching that idea of, hey, we may need to feature him a little heavier.
I mean, it's glaringly obvious.
My guy.
Have you watched any of your games this year?
And again, it feels like every week you're dogging on Donovan Edwards, and it's like, well, he had the big touch. He did. But what else did he do?
Yeah, outside, if you took that away, he had nothing.
And a costly fumble. A fumble that very easily could have cost Michigan that football game. So, but shout out to Kalel, and I'll say this as well. Sherrone Moore, you know, we've talked on this podcast for years now about the aggression that Michigan's coaches have had in big games versus Ryan Day kind of turtling in his shell a little bit. This was really early on, and I know USC fans are going to hate this because it was like, well, the play clock ran out, blah, blah, blah. Sure. There was also USC in the neutral zone that was not so like the officiating balanced itself out. Okay. Officiating is not why USC lost this game. It's because you can't tackle. But Sherrone,
truest thing you've ever said.
This was maybe even the opening drive. I can't recall at this point, but Michigan had it 4th and 1 on their own 35 in the first 4 or 5 minutes of this game, 4th and 1 on the 35 with a very one-dimensional offense. And Sherrone decided to go for it, and he got it. That's the type of aggression that even just long-term outside of that game, I love the fact that he's looking at what he has and saying, I believe that we can still go and get that done, because that just shows me an aggression that Michigan has got to have if they're going to beat teams like USC, Oregon, Ohio State, which for the record, that's kind of the bigger picture here. Okay. As we move on to Minnesota, the whole thing from the beginning of the preseason was you've got to split Texas, USC, Oregon, Ohio State. If you lose this game, we said this on the pod last week, you lose this game, you're in trouble. You're in trouble, right? The fact that you won this game, it doesn't mean, well, now Michigan's contending for a national title. No, now they're at the top of the big. Doesn't mean that. But what it means is that all your goals are still in front of you. The split you need to get into the playoff, still in front of you.
Of those 4 games, USC was the most winnable game for you guys.
For sure, which is not encouraging also.
No.
I'll say that.
No.
And you allude to this as well, to do much of that, to get this win without Will Johnson for the majority of the second half, which, by the way, it looks like he's fine, is impressive. The other thing that is going to be kind of lost in all the just hype around everything else is Colston Loveland didn't play in this game. So you're, dare I say, with everything Kalel did, I'll put it this way, your number one receiving option in an offense that struggles to pass the ball. So you're already a fairly one-dimensional team. And now the one playmaker that really helps you not just be one-dimensional doesn't play in the game. And that's not a knock on Marlon Klein, who played very well, but it's not Colston Loveland. So the hope is that when you get Will Johnson for a full game, you get Colston Loveland healthy and back in rotation. And the hope also would be that Alex Orji, that's his first start. That's a man's first career start, that he gets more comfortable passing the ball. He gets more comfortable with the offense. He gets his top receiving option back. Those are all really positive signs for Michigan. And moving into Minnesota, then Michigan opens as just 10-point favorites here,
which is kind of disrespectful.
I think like, I get it. I get that.
I get
it, but also Minnesota just got beat 31-14 by Iowa.
Well, and Minnesota lost to North Carolina, who just gave up 70 to James Madison.
Yeah, so James Madison basically just beat Minnesota by 100.
Yeah, so like a 10-point,
Didn't UNC do that without their quarterback also?
It's baffling.
All right, so Michigan by 1,000. Minnesota's got a decent defense, but Iowa also
they played
well.
Who?
They have like the 8th ranked total defense. And then Iowa, Tyler Johnson, I believe is their running back's name, ran for 3 touchdowns and just ran amok over those fools. And Michigan is going to do the exact same thing. Michigan's offensive, I mean, we saw this, right? Michigan's offensive line, it has some question marks, but again, you're starting to see it gel a little bit more. Somebody noted that Evan Link, as much as we've ragged on him, is a better
much as you've ragged on him
with good reason, is a better run blocker than pass blocker. And so if you're going to say, hey, we're going to do heavy run game, this offensive line is capable of that. Obviously, Kalel and Don. I don't see Minnesota having a better rush defense than USC does. I just don't.
No.
And Minnesota definitely doesn't have anywhere close to the offense that USC does. This one should be fairly boring. I think it's going to be a fairly boring, low-scoring game. I don't see Minnesota having any sort of oomph.
What do you have?
27-6.
We are weirdly close on our predictions.
Well, I mean, Michigan, listen,
all year though.
Michigan's not going to score 40 plus.
No,
but they're also going to give up next to nothing to Minnesota.
Yeah, I just
don't see it.
For all the same reasons you just listed. I mean, I think it's going to be another, it's going to look like last week's game as far as how Michigan performs. I think the defense is going to be dominating again. I think they finally kind of got themselves into a rhythm. You're going to see a lot of running that they're not going to need to throw the ball.
You may see them take a couple more shots.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, sure. But it's going to be a Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards show again. I've got final score 31 Michigan, 7 Minnesota. Yeah. I think they get a touchdown. And that's it. But it'll be one of those games where Michigan's clearly in control. They're not really ever in a threat to lose.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you're Michigan, if the question has been, what's the identity of this team? It's clear what the identity is. Now, identity also doesn't mean you just accept and say, well, we're just one dimensional.
No. When you got Loveland out there, you've got to still take your shots.
What they did well is they didn't let Alex put the ball into harm's way. They acknowledged his skill set and said, hey, everybody in the world knows this is the thing. Like, this is not the strongest part of your game. We're going to have to do it, but we've got to do it in safe ways. And without our top receiving option there, we're probably going to be a little bit more cautious with it. And you'll see him throw a little bit more, especially if Loveland comes back this week. Which, by the way, we're recording this like an hour before Sherrone's press conference, which is always delightful because we'll say stuff and then Sherrone goes, yeah, that's not it at all.
I listened to what the rival pod said. Forget those guys. I'm doing this.
Yeah, Michigan over Minnesota is a pretty easy pick for me. Hey, we want to say thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction. I originally wrote this ad read for Clemson and then for Florida State. This week, maybe you feel like Jonathan Smith and Michigan State.
Thank you.
You know what you're doing isn't working and you need to transfer in some help. Not Aidan Chiles, but other transfer in some help. Our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the portal to a successful project. Our friend Aaron and his team, they've been doing this a long time. They'll communicate openly. Honestly, you will be wowed at the finished product. If you've got a home, church, or business build, go with the folks with integrity in their name, elevatedintegrity.com. We're also really proud this year to be part of the Varsity Network. Shout out to them. Varsity Network, powered by Learfield, a must-have for every college football fan. You can enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like this one. Search for your school or the Rivalry podcast and find tailored content. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. Just search for the podcast in the Varsity Network app. And then finally, we mentioned this already, but be sure to go to rivalpod.com. Get yourself a t-shirt. We got ones for both sides of the rivalry.
Yeah,
JP mentioned we just got
stickers are available there.
We just got a new batch order in, so get yours ordered before they sell out again. You can also pre-order once those are gone, but just know it's going to take a little bit of time, so don't wait on it. Rivalpod.com. We've got blogs, articles, photo gallery, social links, all that good stuff there as well. Ohio State and Marshall this past weekend. What was a fairly enjoyable first half. Ish for me. Not really. Ohio State wins by a ton.
Yeah, I mean, final score is 49-14. Marshall and we were on our way to Ann Arbor at this time, so we were trying to listen to this game through the loudest static we could ever hear because we were almost
Thank you,
to Ann Arbor.
Radio.
Yeah, we were almost to Ann Arbor by that point. And I think you told me while we were driving, Marshall had about 200 yards. This game, ESPN cared about so little that when I was trying to do some more research, because I didn't obviously get to watch the game, and so as I was trying to go back and watch highlights and look at box scores and everything like that, and I pulled up ESPN to kind of look at the box score, look at each individual drive, see what happened, where they were giving up stuff, all that kind of stuff. ESPN just didn't care to put that stuff up there. And so it was insane. I don't know the actual factual about this part.
They had about 200
yards
in
of
the first
offense
half.
at the half, but they only finished with 264. So the Buckeyes figured some things out.
A shout out, by the way, to one of the best football names I've heard in a while. Stone Earl,
which just sounds like a man that is
I love
his
that.
NIL deal is Tudor's Biscuit World.
Stone Earl.
Ohio State rushed for 280 yards. Judkins, 14 carries, $173, 2 touchdowns. Henderson, only 6 carries, but he had 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 40-something yard run. Some nasty stiff arms from both of those guys. Will Howard played well, 16 of 20, 275, 2 touchdowns. He did have an interception that was a deep shot to Jeremiah Smith that was one of those Screwity's down there somewhere type throws.
It's the type of plays you can make against Marshall.
You can do that. They had 569 yards of offense. I mean, it is what it is. You'd love to see a little bit more focus at the beginning. Because I wrote this down. You can give up an early score. They went down 7-0 to Marshall off the first drive. You can go down on an early score to a team like Marshall and still feel confident in your team's ability to come back and dominate. But that's something that I look for against like an Oregon, a Penn State. You've got to be the team that's able to come out and hit and throw the first punch. So I don't want to sound overly critical because look at the final score, look at the yards of offense, look at what they did in the second half. But I think that's where you see the difference between teams like Marshall and Ohio State is, the second half, they only allowed 60-something yards because of the depth. Ohio State's got crazy depth while Marshall's still playing their guys, and they're worn out by that point.
Well, and you also, if you're Marshall, you've also got to adjust your philosophy where from what we could gather, it sounded like it was just a lot of mobile quarterback and a lot of running.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're down 35-14, you can't operate that way.
You're gassed. And so I think I'm not trying to be overly critical because a win is a win and it was a dominant performance all around. But I do look at that and I go, well, if I'm going to be nitpicky on something, I'm going to be nitpicky a little bit on the focus at the beginning of the game because that's stuff that I would like to see. You're bringing back seniors. You're bringing back guys that are supposed to have a chip on their shoulder. And I just don't like seeing that. Not that I need you to go out there and pitch a shutout every single game and slam them into the ground and whatever.
Starting slow has been kryptonite for Ohio State for years.
I'm just over it at this point. You're too talented. You won 49-14, but it's one of those where I look at it and I go, yeah, but should we have let them score 14? No, I just don't. I don't care. Maybe it sounds a little bit spoiled, and it probably is, but no, Marshall should not be scoring 14 points against what I would consider an elite defense. Marshall is not an elite offense. They have the one wide receiver, I think his name's like Fitzpatrick, that he had another phenomenal catch this past Saturday. He had a one-handed grab last week that was crazy. But they are not a team that should be putting up 14 points on the road at Ohio State. And other than that, there's nothing to really be nitpicky about.
The Ohio State don't get ejected for targeting challenge, level impossible.
Yeah, 3 games in a row where the first game against Akron, they ended up not called. They reviewed it and decided not to.
Wasn't it?
Igbenogson literally first play of the game, and they decided that he was still eligible. It wasn't called targeting, but it was reviewed for it. Then week number 2 against Western Michigan, you had Denzel Burke get taken out for it. And then now you have Caden Curry go in and just an atrociously stupid play.
Like he did not need to do that.
He did not need to. And what made me laugh so hard is that he does it and then immediately puts his hands over his face like, I can't believe I just did that. Bro, you were the one in control of that. You could have simply not.
If it's not the consequences of my own actions.
Myself, why would you do such a thing? Caden, he threw the ball 5 seconds ago, my guy. It's over. The play is done.
It's little stuff like that.
Man,
I told you this, I think on the way back from Ann Arbor, as we were kind of talking a little bit about Ohio State too, the good news here is that now it feels like there's actually stuff you can clean up. Like there are hey, discipline seems to be an issue. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can clean that up. Why are we giving up 200 yards of offense in the first half to Marshall? That's going to be something we can there's now actually stuff you can address in practice
and people are talking about
in the film room and stuff like that versus, well, that was pretty good, I guess. What now?
And people are looking forward to the games against Oregon, against Penn State, Michigan, those type of games. And they're looking at this. And we talked about it a little bit on the drive back about, well, you need to get these games in because you've got these tough road challenges. And I want to hit on that for just a little bit because I think where I stand on this, and I said this to you driving back from the game Saturday, you normally only feel that way when you don't have an experienced team.
Yeah.
Ohio State's bringing back a butt ton of guys, or they brought back a butt ton of guys that have that experience, that have played in those big games. A lot of this defense that was elite last year was at the Notre Dame game and played in that game where they came back.
Yeah.
Some of them played against Georgia in that semifinal game. They've played in the game against Michigan. They're used to those tough environments. So don't read into the hype. Don't buy into that. We'll see what the Buckeyes look like when they go to Oregon. They need to get a tough test. This Buckeye team is an experienced squad that should be. I'm not saying that this won't happen where they come out flat, but I'm feeling confident that you're bringing these experienced guys back for that reason, because they're experienced. So don't read into this game too much if you're a Buckeye fan. It was a dominant victory. They cleaned it up in the second half. You've got a chance to go out there under the lights at East Lansing. And while Michigan State isn't a phenomenal team, they're still, 3-1? It's still... It's still a test.
Here's the thing with Michigan State. They're not good. Michigan State squeaked past Florida Atlantic at home in the home opener.
And then played a school named Prairie View A&M.
So they accidentally beat FAU at home. They played Prairie View A&M, which is a real school. They did beat Maryland. They've kind of hung their hat on that. Okay. And then got beat by Boston College.
Yeah. Which I will say, Boston College isn't a bad school this year.
I'm pretty sure that Aidan Chiles threw 3 interceptions.
Okay. I want to talk about him for a little bit because I knew how to say his name. But then when I was reading it before we hit the podcast, I was second guessing myself. It's one of those moments.
What were you trying to call him?
Well, it's one of those moments where you look at a word and it just doesn't look like it was spelled right. And so I knew it was Chiles because I've said his name a million times. My friend Sneed is a huge Michigan State fan.
Don't tell me.
I second guessed and I thought, is it Chiles or is it Chili's? And then I got hungry because Chili's is delicious. Aidan Chiles is terrible.
Chili's baby back ribs.
I could go for some of those baby back ribs right now.
Gosh.
Aidan Chiles, now in my mind, I just want to call it Chili's. So you know
Aidan
what?
Chiles.
Until he earns the respect, Chili's he shall be. He's thrown 7 interceptions in 4 games. 3 of his last 4 games, he's had multiple picks.
And again, by the way, remember the schedule we just told you.
The only game that he didn't was against, you guessed it, Prairie View A&M, where he did not have an interception.
This is not a good football team. After they beat Maryland, it was either right after Maryland or after Prairie View. It may have been after Maryland because Michigan had gotten beat by Texas. Yeah. The social media geniuses over at Michigan State were questioning whether or not they had a shot to beat Michigan. I'll let you in on a little preview of that game. No,
you don't.
No, you don't.
Yeah, it's just
this is a bad football team
against Boston College. He had 3 interceptions.
I'll give them this. Here's what Michigan State can do. There is talent in that offense. Aidan Chiles does have talent. He just makes terrible decisions. Mm-hmm. What's his name? Is it Andrew Marsh? Nick Marsh?
Marsh. Yeah, Marsh.
Phenomenal. I believe he's a freshman, and forgive me, except don't, because I'm not really sorry that I don't know that much about Michigan State yet. Marsh is a really good receiver. So you're going to get tested deep. That's the sort of thing where if you're Ohio State, you go, okay, this is actually helpful to be in a game that we are not going to be in danger of losing, but we're going to get tested in a couple different areas.
The Michigan State fans are going to buy into the fact that they're 3-1. They're not going to look at the fact that one of those is against an Amish school in the hills of wherever Prairie View A&M is at, where they rode in on their team bus was a horse-drawn carriage.
Is this just because it has the name Prairie in it?
Yeah, the only reason. Gosh. I still honestly don't even know where that school's located.
It's in Texas.
Is it really?
I hate that I know that.
I assumed because the school had A&M at the end of it, and it feels like only Texas schools ever have that.
That feels right.
And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, well, the fan base is going to show up because they're 3-1 and it's a night game. So you're going into a hostile environment. It won't stay that way for long. The Buckeyes are going to absolutely cruise through this.
Michigan went into a hostile environment last year and won 49-0.
This defense is too good for Aidan Chiles to have as many turnovers as he has.
Spot on.
You can't do that. When you're as big of an underdog, which right now they're 25-point underdogs, which is a little bit disrespectful as well.
I kind of love it, though.
It's going to be worse. I got my final score 42-10. I think it'll be another same thing you've seen the past 2 weeks. I don't think Will Howard's going to have to do a lot. I think Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson is going to get the job done, and it'll just be kind of a slow ride throughout the rest of the game.
Let me just tell you, because I this should be obvious based on the name of this podcast. If you've listened to it for like more than 10 seconds, I hate this matchup because Michigan State, Ohio State is like, I can't say that. If the devil and the Taliban played each other,
just say it. You've said it. Go.
I have to cheer for Michigan State in this game. And I hate that I have to do that. But this is how it works every year. Notre Dame plays Ohio State. Okay, I guess it's Notre Dame. Alabama plays Ohio State. Roll Tide. You know, like that. That's how this is.
Can we save that right there just for the future reference?
But like, somebody had asked on our YouTube, which subscribe at Rival Pod. But somebody had asked, like, hey, like, do I cheer for the Big Ten teams and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, is that cool? You can do what you want. I'm cheering for 4 things each week: Michigan, upsets, and whoever's playing Michigan State and Ohio State. Okay, like I would rather you come into the game 0-11. I don't want that. Well, it looks good if they come in undefeated. No, I don't care.
I'm the same way.
Every single game.
I think I'm the same way. It's like whoever Michigan plays, I want Michigan to lose. But it is also sweet when you guys come in and are undefeated and we get to ruin the season, or you have a good record and we get a chance to do that. Like, it does add a little extra oomph to it. But I ain't gonna complain if you guys come in and have 0 wins.
There's absolutely like if let's say Michigan comes in this season and they're ranked 23rd. I don't know. Ohio State's ranked 2nd. Does that game feel different than years past where it's been 1v2, 2v3? Yeah, it feels different, but it doesn't matter anymore because it already matters at this level. So all I'm saying is I hate that I have to cheer for Michigan State in this game, but I will be cheering. I will be cheering for Michigan State. 38-17 Ohio State.
That offense is not scoring 17 points.
I think they've got, again, I don't think the offense is good, but I think they've got, it's that weird balance, right? Where there's talent, but then there's just stupidity. And that's what I feel like Michigan State has. They have a lot of that. I think there's a decent amount of talent. I also think there's a lot of stupidity. I think they'll manage 17. I don't think you're in danger of losing this game. That's all I got. Hit me up real quick with Rutgers to the Rose Bowl, because Rutgers continues to roll.
Big win against Virginia Tech this past Saturday.
By the way, if you're new to the podcast, your second team is Rutgers. God knows why. And so Rutgers the Rose Bowl is literally you just updating us. How likely is it that Rutgers makes the Rose Bowl? Because when that happens, we will drop everything and go.
Oh, I will be there. I honestly, if I didn't have a bachelor party this Saturday, was really strongly debating going to Piscataway this Friday.
Who do you guys even play?
It is Washington, and it's Friday night under the lights. Ooh. And it's a huge game. Will Rogers is going to be stepping into Piscataway to face off against the Scarlet Knights. They came off a big win against Virginia Tech. That was kind of the first one people had circled on their calendars as like, this will tell us what this team can be.
Nobody had this game circled on their calendars.
JP definitely did. I talked about it, I think, since the beginning of the season.
You haven't stopped talking about that for sure.
The fact that they were able to pull it out, and honestly, the score was a lot closer than what the game really was. Rutgers had a handful of chances in the end zone that they just didn't convert, which is very Rutgers-like. But we
don't need the analysis.
They were dominant. Right now, Rutgers to the Rose Bowl, I'm giving it a 4.5.
4.5.
This is
4.5 stars.
4.5 Schianos. This is a team that realistically,
I hate this.
Realistically, especially if they pull off this win against Washington,
which is not unlikely, because I don't know what Washington is. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know what this team is. I'll tell you what. During next week's episode, I'll find out for you before Michigan goes there.
The Scarlet Faithful in games like this always show up. They're always loud. It's always a more hostile environment.
I'd love to see Rutgers win this game.
If they win this game, you're potentially telling your kids about a 9-win Rutgers team.
Okay, let's just cut it off right there.
9 wins.
Speaking of stupid genius upset picks of the week. Your boy finally got one.
So dumb. So dumb.
Again, stupid genius. It's got to be at least a 5-point underdog that we pick. If you get the upset pick correct, you get whatever that underdog spread was added to your point total. We keep track. I took BYU over Kansas State. They were 7.5-point dogs. Not only did they cover that, they blew them out of the water.
Yeah, what was the final? Because that was a late game.
I want to say 31-9, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But yeah, BYU puts me up 7.5-0 over you.
So really, really quick side note about BYU, because this week they play Baylor and are somehow underdogs now. They are underdogs against Baylor.
Don't underestimate the Mormons, man.
Gross.
Run you over with their bikes. So stupid genius. Who did you pick for stupid genius last week? I don't even remember. I know you were wrong.
I picked Georgia Tech over Louisville, I believe.
Were you wrong?
I was definitely wrong.
Okay, cool.
Georgia Tech was in the lead for a little bit, and I thought maybe I'd get it right. And then when I checked, it was like 35-17, something like that.
Because it worked last week picking against them, I'm going back to Kansas State for my stupid genius upset pick. Oklahoma State opens as 5.5-point dogs against Kansas State.
Okay.
I really like Alan Bowman and the Cowboy offense. Used to live in Stillwater, pistols firing. Pew pew. Give me the cow. That's gonna make a lot of my friends back in Stillwater happy. Give me the Cowboys in this one. 5.5-point underdogs against Kansas State. I think a loss like that really takes it out of a team like Kansas State. That's not you. I don't buy that they're used to overcoming adversity. I think Oklahoma State's got this.
My stupid genius pick is going to be not a surprise to anybody because I just don't respect this team at all. I have number 15 Louisville over number 16 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is 5-point favorites as of now.
I forgot that they played this week.
Notre Dame is just not it. I don't see it.
Well, is Louisville it? Also, no.
I don't think so, but I think more so than what I've seen from Notre Dame.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see Notre Dame drop another game because then we can stop talking about, the Cade McNamara. Well, what if we went out, huh?
Yeah, gross.
We don't have to worry about that.
See Notre Dame, not because I'm afraid of them at all, but because what a waste of a good game that we would be seeing.
One more thing that I want to throw in there. I meant to mention this back at Michigan. I had probably, I apologize for just tacking this on the end here because I really intend to mention this. I had probably the weirdest press box experience of my career. Okay, this is season 6 of doing the rivalry, but I've also done just back in that done a ton of like college play-by-play stuff. This is by far the weirdest press box experience I've ever had. So one of the big things that is emphasized at every school is we've talked about this on the pod. This is a working press box. There's no cheering. Now, granted, you'll get guys, and I'll do it too.
It's
like
me, I'm guys.
you'll get folks that like let's go. Like just kind of to yourself, or fist bump somebody around you, whatever. So the Michigan's been dominating USC. USC in the second half starts to get a little momentum, and there's these guys back behind me, like kind of I guess over my left shoulder. It doesn't really matter, but in the row behind me, because I matter and I'm in the front row now. Who anytime USC does something good, full lungs. There it is. Everyone's just like kind of turning and looking like, are you serious right now? It was not like, one time. It was like multiple times in a row. So
reaching obnoxious level.
People starting to kind of chatter. I even kind of, just to nobody in particular, was like, my guy, like, this is not how you handle yourself. Especially, number one, we're all professionals. Number two, especially as a road team, like, handle yourself even like a little bit more dignified than that. So somehow along the way, they somehow get into the front row down to my right now. Don't know how that happened. They decided, I guess, hey, there's a seat. We can just sit wherever because we're making up our own rules now. So this has been going on, right? USC then, after the Donovan Edwards fumble, so things have gone kind of off the rails for Michigan all of a sudden, all right? So put that in your head. So they're already kind of being a bit obnoxious. Fumble happens. USC gets to 3rd and long, converts for a touchdown, take the first lead of the game. And these guys, I still don't know I don't know what this means. Full volume. Touchdown in the end zone. USC takes the lead late. Michigan sputtering. There you go, Metallica. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's an old person thing. If someone knows what that means, tell me. I don't care, but I'm curious now. Just like full volume. And you could tell like the press box then starts getting a little chippy. Like there's a guy now in the row above them talking about 25 years since you were relevant, USC. Like, I'm like, are we about to have it out in the press box?
Man.
Are media members about to throw hands? Phenomenally, when Kalel Mullings rips off the 60 whatever yard run to put him in position, somebody may have offered up, there you go, Metallica. And
was it you?
Somebody may have. Michigan punches it in, and I look down to my right, and those guys are gone. Just straight to the elevators. Gone so soon. So vocal. Disappeared into the night. I wish them well. That was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced in the press. I've never experienced
you've seen
a
me
visitor be that like it's one thing to do it to yourself, but to be that vocal that you're causing a disturbance for other people around you.
You know how I am.
That's insane.
You've been next to me when we were at Penn State right before the game where I called a Cade Stover game, and he had just an enormous day. Yeah. And even I was able to keep it under control as best as I could.
There's even something to be said for, hey, I'm going to kind of step back here and punch the air or something. You're not yelling, Cade Stover. Like that's the equivalent of what was happening here. Like, what are you doing?
I will for sure stand up and I will do some fist pumping. But man,
super wild. And to be honest, maybe it was the fish. Okay,
a bold move,
as amazing, and we are so grateful for everything Michigan does for letting us be part of that. The fish tacos on a 90-degree day was a bold
choice, Cotton.
A bold choice, and maybe that's all it was. They said, "Hey, we're missing Southern California. Could go for some tacos. Didn't sit well. Led them to just blurt out ridiculous things about USC.
And then do that.
And maybe they weren't heading for the elevators. Maybe they were heading elsewhere because they needed to. I don't know. Either way, Michigan gets a big win. Hey, be sure to subscribe to the Rivalry Podcast on the Varsity Network app or wherever you're listening right now. On Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube at RivalPod. And be sure to check out the articles this week. I may have a few thousand words to say about what happened on Saturday.
Page manifesto here or there.
At rivalpod.com. And thanks for supporting the podcast.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.